Monday's edition of Raw. Let's talk Night 2 of the draft. This is AM Talks WWE. We start with Stephanie McMahon announcing the picks for round 1. Raw starts by selecting Imperium, announced as Gunther and Ludwig, without Giovanni Vinci, followed up with the draft pick of Damage Control. SmackDown starts by selecting Jade Cargill, followed up with the draft pick of Kevin Owens. For my thoughts on round 1, it's a repeat for Raw to keep Imperium, and I would have wanted to see Gunther on SmackDown to go up against a top babyface like Cody Rhodes and continue their rivalry. Maybe WWE is saving it for another time. When it comes to Damage Control, good to see the change of scenery, and let's see what happens after they drop the Women's Tag Team Championships. No changes for SmackDown, however, picking Jade Cargill and Kevin Owens in round 1 keeps the current plans intact for creative, when Jade Cargill teams with Bianca Belair and Kevin Owens teams with Randy Orton. Logan Paul and iShow Speed announced the picks for round 2. Raw starts by selecting CM Punk, followed by a returning Braun Strowman. SmackDown starts by selecting The Pride, Lashley, Profits, and B-Fab, followed by a rising star, Tiffany Stratton. As expected for CM Punk to stay with Raw and continue his feud with Drew McIntyre, along with being in the World Heavyweight title scene. Braun Strowman being on Monday nights is cool, and let's see how they build with him or involve him with Uncle Howdy potentially. Not sure for SmackDown to keep Lashley, Profits, B-Fab. Lashley should honestly be on Monday nights and competing for the World Heavyweight title, but I digress. Ron Simmons and JBL, the APA, announced the picks for round 3. Raw selects LWO, followed up by Drew McIntyre. SmackDown selects Legado del Fantasma, followed up by Shinsuke Nakamura. For my thoughts on this round, it's interesting to see LWO and Legado del Fantasma on separate brands, and curious to see where that will go. Carlito's still listed as part of LWO, this leaves us with more questions. As expected for Raw to keep Drew McIntyre, given the history followed up by a good change of scenery for Shinsuke. Let's see if he's able to get the wins to line up with the way he's presented before the matches. Teddy Long and Alundra Blaze announced the picks for round 4. Raw selects the Judgment Day, followed up by the official main roster debut, former NXT champion, Ilya Dragunov. SmackDown selects Naomi, followed up by the team of Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. For my thoughts on this round, as expected for Raw to keep Judgment Day, but it's interesting for the LWO and the continuation of Rey. As expected for SmackDown to keep Naomi for the Women's WWE Championship scene, and interesting that they are bringing the team of Green and Niven over to SmackDown. The Dudley Boys announced the picks for round 5. Raw selects The New Day, followed up by former NXT Women's Champion, Lyra Valkyria. SmackDown selects Pretty Deadly, followed up by the team of Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. For my thoughts on this round, the New Day carry the same energy on either brand. Calling up former NXT Women's Champion Lyra Valkyria is interesting for the women's division on Monday nights. Pretty Deadly should have moved to Monday nights since we already have a heel tag team as champions, and they could have mixed it up with R-Truth and The Miz. Somewhat interesting for Candice and Indy to switch. Let's see how that plays out. Raw GM Adam Pearce and SmackDown GM Nick Aldis announced the final picks in round 6. Raw selects Final Testament, followed up by Bronson Reed. SmackDown selects DIY, followed up by a call-up to the main roster, Blair Davenport. For my thoughts on this round, Raw selecting Final Testament and moving away from the tension with the Pride is different, and maybe they will go up against R-Truth and The Miz for the World Tag titles. As expected for Bronson Reed to stay on Monday nights, and it seems like he will continue to go after the Intercontinental Championship. For DIY to arrive on SmackDown, it's expected because they need a change from Raw after losing. Glad to see SmackDown end their live draft picks with NXT's Blair Davenport, rising talent for the women's division in the WWE. Let's talk about the segments on this show. Women's World Champion Becky Lynch starts the show with a chat and proud to be champion. Liv Morgan shows up and says she took out Rhea Ripley and Becky couldn't at WrestleMania 40. Nia Jax shows up and says she's going to be on SmackDown, but she's taking one of them with her. Liv knocks her off the ring apron, and the match is set for later. When the second round picks ended, Logan Paul comes down to the ring and says Damian Priest will beat Jey Uso, who can't win anything on his own. Jey Uso shows up, and both have a yeet battle. Judgment Day shows up, Uso gets beaten down. Patrick Mahomes gives Logan Paul his Super Bowl ring to hit Uso, but hits JD by mistake. A returning Braun Strowman shows up for the save. World Tag Team Champions Miz and R-Truth backstage. Truth being funny and thinking he might get drafted to the NFL, and Miz says no, it's the WWE draft. Once R-Truth leaves, Chad Gable mocks Miz and gets jumped by Intercontinental Champion Sami Zayn to settle the score from their built-up rivalry so far. Drew McIntyre shows up for a chat with the fans, and he's upset that he was picked in the third round after CM Punk. McIntyre says his elbow was fractured at WrestleMania, yet he's still here, unlike Punk. When now we see Punk in the skybox, and he says he's here, and McIntyre is livid. Chad Gable is backstage and upset with Alpha Academy for being hyped despite not winning. Chad Gable says they better go win. LWO is backstage and says they have unfinished business with Carlito. Dominic Mysterio interrupts, and Rey Mysterio mocks his mustache. We see a continuation of Drew McIntyre up in the skybox and finds an autographed photo. And then we see CM Punk in the ring for a chat. He says he loves the people here, so he won't waste time, and he will cut this promo in less amount of time that Drew McIntyre lost the World Heavyweight Championship. Punk is happy that McIntyre got injured, and thinks he should continue talking on social media because that's all he's good at, according to Punk. He says he got drafted because he's better at anything in wrestling. He says winners will make things happen themselves. He says once he's healthy, he will ruin McIntyre's life. Fired up promo from CM Punk. Backstage, we see Booker T happy about the picks, and then we see Raw GM Adam Pearce happy that Chelsea Green has gone to SmackDown in a very comedic way. Now, let's talk about the matches on this show and my thoughts on them. Just like the 6 rounds of the draft, there were 6 matches. It started with Gunther defeating Xavier Woods in a submission. It was a quick match for Gunther, and defeating a former King of the Ring on his way to the new tournament was good for Gunther. The second match was Sami Zayn defeating Bronson Reed via DQ when Chad Gable interfered. The match was as expected. It seems like we will get a triple threat scenario, and even if we don't, Chad Gable needs to win the championship in the near future. The third match was Candice LeRae defeating Maxine Dupree with her finisher. It was a quick match, and not sure what this will do for Maxine going forward or Candice LeRae. The fourth match was Liv Morgan defeating Nia Jax with an Oblivion. Nia Jax keeps losing, Liv looking like a front runner, Naomi and Stratton out there to even things out with Nia. It was okay. The fifth match was the World Tag Team Champions Awesome Truth. As expected for Truth and Miz to go and retain, and for Alpha Academy to be on a losing streak. Hopefully for Alpha Academy, it will lead to a change in direction or to a big win. The final match of the night was Jey Uso teaming up with Ricochet and Andrade, defeating the Judgment Day. The match was good enough here. Uso gets some momentum for Backlash. While I can't see Damian Priest losing the title, they are providing some intrigue with Judgment Day. The members making mistakes, and Damian saying that he doesn't need their help. This didn't feel like a main event, but it served its purpose. For the notable moments of the night, having variety of faces from WWE Hall of Famers to current NFL players and social media personalities. Glad to see Stephanie McMahon make more appearances after WrestleMania 40, and looking forward to her role in the future. Legends like Booker T being utilized backstage properly when Booker makes a comment that CM Punk being drafted is interesting, and McIntyre walks by and says Booker T has changed. Great way to keep McIntyre's new main event developments going. Also, his interaction with APA was great. The show could have used a bigger shakeup for the drafts, but this draft served its purpose for the future NXT stars while establishing what we need to know moving forward. This is AM Talks WWE. Thanks for tuning in.